We'll come back to order. Ms. Gorgia, would you please call the roll?
Board Member Durham.
Here.
Board Member Flores.
Here.
Board Member Goff.
Here.
Board Member McClellan.
Here.
Board Member Rankin.
Here.
Board Member Shuffle.
Here.
Board Member Schroeder.
Here.
Thank you. Everybody's here.
First order of business on our agenda is the designation of our two state board legislative contacts. Board members Goff and Durham have expressed willingness to serve as legislative contacts again this year. Does anyone object to this? And I thank you both for your willingness to do that. It's extremely helpful. So I'd like to reappoint Board Member Durham to serve as Republican Board Member Legislative Contact and Board Member Goff to serve as the Democratic Board Member Legislative Contact for the 2019 legislative session, for which we are looking forward. All right, Ms. Mello.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on our agenda is the legislative update. What do you have for us today, please? I hope you hit him harder than he hit you.
Good morning. Thank you for your patience. Everything takes just a little tiny bit longer for me right now and for another 4 weeks. So, good morning. Nice to see you all. Happy November. I was going to talk about 3 kind of general topics today, so let me outline those for you so you have a sense of where I'm going. And if there's other information you'd like me to share, I'm happy to do that. I was just going to give kind of a recap on the election results. Not that you all don't know them, but kind of some of the implications for those results in the work that we all do together. We're going to talk a little bit, just briefly, kind of start the discussion about legislative priorities. I don't anticipate that's a super long conversation. The plan right now is you guys will adopt those in January. This is kind of the kickoff to that. And then I'll just give you my famous, it's probably not really that famous, I shouldn't flatter myself, my famous cloudy crystal ball predictions of what we may or may not see at the Capitol. Are there any other big picture topics that you all were hoping I would cover that I haven't mentioned?
Just my regular reminder that the parents on the Special Education Committee would love to know if you see something on the horizon that might be of interest to them. They might like to have the heads up.
Board Member McClellan, thank you for that reminder. You're so good always about reaching out ahead of your meetings with them. I will make a note. Okay, so again, I don't need to, given that you all are elected officials, I'm pretty sure you know what the election results were. If not, I sent you a report that I bet you all read page to page.
Thank you. Actually, we did.
You know, we will have Democratic control of all of the executive branch agencies, which is not something we've had in a long time, so that will be interesting and will have implications. I think in the state Senate, it'll be a 19-16 Democrat to Republican margin. Basically gives the Democrats a 2-vote, you know, they have 2 votes ahead of the Republicans. There are, I think the thing that is most important for you all to know and that I wanted to talk about is committee chairs and committee assignments. Those have not been made yet. So those decisions have not been made. I don't have any official information on that to give you for the most part. When we get to the JBC, that's a little different. That can happen anytime between now and Christmas. Those decisions are made by the leadership of the various caucuses. They get to make them when they make them, and sometimes they come earlier. Sometimes we get them before Thanksgiving. That's rare. We almost always get them before Christmas, and that's the best I can tell you on the timing of that.
So they are appointed.
So, yeah, for example, because I'm talking about the Senate right now, so the Senate Democrats who are now in charge of the Senate, so they have the Senate President and the Senate Majority Leader, those 2 individuals, technically it's the President, but they usually work together, will decide who's going to chair each committee. It'll be a Democrat, just given the margin of control. They also decide how large each committee is.
Oh, that's right.
Right? So you can, sometimes you have some shrinking or growing of committees depending on a variety of factors. And then they assign their members to the committees. Once all that's kind of done, the minority party, in this case the Senate Republicans, you know, basically said there's 3 Republican seats on Senate Ed. You guys decide what you want to do with them. And then their leadership will make those appointments. So.
But it's the leadership that makes the appointments, period.
Absolutely. And they have that is, you know, fully within their authority, and there's no As far as I know, no one's ever questioned that, or at least not in the recent history. I think it is highly likely that Senator Nancy Todd will chair Senate Education. Again, I'm not saying she's been appointed. I'm just saying that is mine and many other people's best guess. There are 3 open seats technically on the Senate Education Committee in terms of people who are not coming back. That would be Senator Michael Merrifield, Senator Tim Neville, and then Senator Rachel Zenzinger is moving over to the Joint Budget Committee, so she won't be able to serve on the Education Committee. Now, so technically there's 3 open. You could have someone who was on the committee last year who either doesn't want to still be on it. You know, there could be more than 3 moving chairs on that. In the House, so the House Democrats will control that chamber by 41 votes at this point. That is a very, very, very large margin, just so you know. The last time any party had that big of a margin of control in the House was 1965, when the Democrats had 42 seats. So it was a long time ago. It's a pretty big deal that they have that many seats. Casey Becker, who's the new speaker, and Alec Garnett, who's the new majority leader, will, same process I just outlined in terms of the decision making. There are 8 open seats on the House Education Committee. There's quite a bit more turnover there. Part of that is people decided not to run again. Part of that is people ran and lost. Part of that is people are moving on to the Senate. There's a variety of reasons, but there's 8 open seats. So I think we'll see quite a bit of turnover on the House Education Committee. In terms of chairmanship, that one's a little bit harder to predict. I think that Representative Janet Buckner from Aurora is a strong possibility. Representative Jeff Bridges is another possibility. And there very well could be other people who would be interested in that. So if I didn't say your name and you're listening, please don't get mad at me. I just hadn't heard the rumor. As I mentioned, the Joint Budget Committee is actually set. That membership is a done deal. They start meeting today. Today's the 15th. So the JBC will be chaired by Senator Dominic Moreno. Senator Rachel Zenzinger, as I mentioned, will be the other Senate Democrat on the committee. The Senate Republican will be Dennis Heisey. He's a brand new elected senator. He's from the kind of Canyon City, Fountain area part of the state. He's served in local government. He doesn't have state legislative experience, but he has some local government experience.
Does he have financial experience?
Madam Chair,
Just
I
curious.
probably some in terms of being a local elected official. How equivalent that is to the work of the Joint Budget Committee, I'm just probably not the best person to make that comparison. House Republicans will continue to be represented by Representative Bob Rankin. I think you all have met him once or twice before. And he will be joined in the House on the Democratic side by Representative Danae Escar. She's from the northern Pueblo area. And Representative Chris Hansen, who is a Denver legislator. So that's election as it affects our work. Any questions on any of that?
So he won't be on education.
Madam Chair, that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, if you're on the JBC, that is your only committee, because as
And
you all know,
he does have
work a
financial, a fair amount of financial
that is
experience.
correct.
So there
Definitely.
is somebody there who's
On the
got that.
JBC, yeah.
Yeah.
And who was the person, Danae? What?
Danae Escar, ESGAR. And I think she's been in the House for 4 years, and she's from Pueblo.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I am told that in your board packets, you all got a copy of your last year's legislative priorities. What I was hoping to do today is just have, a very kind of general and relatively brief conversation about any topics that you feel like aren't addressed that you would like to be addressed, or big changes you would like to see, or just I think what we're trying to do is kind of collect topics that we may need to work on, and then I will work with you all, either individually or collectively. I mean, we'll figure out whatever the best approach on that is, and then produce a draft that you guys will get to see before the January board meeting, at which point I think the plan is for you to take a vote. So with that introduction, and I don't know if Board Member Goff and I have talked a little bit about this. I know she has some thoughts, and I don't know if others do, but I'm open.
My thoughts were to suggest to colleagues to let you know.
Sure. So
rather
what I
than-
would ask.
Rather than actually getting into the,
Could we? Just a couple of things?
I would rather that that you all just send notes directly to Ms. Mello, and then she can share the collective thoughts, and then we can kind of weigh in rather than doing that right now.
And there may very well be some overlap, so I think that'd be great.
Exactly.
I'm happy to be a repository of that, and then I can try to kind of piece it together and make some sense, and then I will follow up with you individually. I promise that I will, faithfully convey back to the full board everything that I hear. So I'll send a follow-up just to remind you all, but
That'd be
if
good.
possible, if you could, I don't know, I'm thinking early December, if you could just get me at least a rough idea of what you're thinking about, and then we'll go from there. Great,
I think
thank
that
you.
would be helpful.
Okay, crystal ball time.
So let me say one more thing about that particular topic, which is that in looking over it, it's quite general, and that may be what's best, but I want you to look at it in those terms.
And
please,
Madam Chair,
whether that's how you want to keep it, or have more specificity.
right, and obviously that is your all's decision to
Right.
make, and I will implement whatever decision you make. I will tell you based on my professional experience that I think keeping it fairly general is a strong approach, because the challenge is we don't know exactly what we're going to see coming down the pike, right? We never know exactly what all the bills are. So when you keep this more general, what it does is it gives the ledge contacts and your staff kind of a lens through which to view proposals. Instead of you guys could spend endless amounts of time, on some specific component of the school finance formula and get it just how you want it in here, and that may never come up. So, whether that you guys can decide whether you think that's a good use of your time or not. But in general, I find that keeping it more general is more helpful for clients. So, do what you will with that.
Okay.
In terms of what we're going to see in the 2019 session, having a brand new governor come in is a big deal. Regardless of who the governor is, regardless of the partisan stuff, it's just a whole new administration, right? It's a whole new set of people. Every governor has their own way of approaching the legislative process. It is, I think, widely anticipated that Governor-elect Polis intends to be pretty proactive and pretty involved in the legislative process. So that'll be a little different than we've had for the last 8 years. We'll see how that plays out. Obviously, Governor-elect Polis talked about a lot of things in his campaign, and it is a pretty good guess that those will be the things he's going to want to talk to the legislature about this year. Those include full-day kindergarten funding, complete access to early childhood, preschool. He has talked in fairly general terms, speaking of general principles, about school finance and the funding formula and making sure the money is getting where it's needed the most. That could be interpreted lots of different ways. That's a great kind of statement that, the devil's in the details. Whether or not he'll want to take on a rewrite of school finance in his first year, I don't know. That'd be a pretty heavy lift. But we will see.
So related to that, there's an interim committee still working on that, right?
Yes, they're actually, yeah, and I can
How do you put those
transition
two
right to that.
together? Yeah.
There is an interim school finance committee. You all may remember that was legislation adopted actually 2 years ago. It set up a 2-year-long interim school finance committee. They have had a few logistical challenges in terms of contractor turnover that slowed them down a little bit. They have been really just kind of starting to dig into the meat of it over the last several months, which doing that and running an election at the same time has been a little complicated. They are meeting again on Friday. I think the plan there is that they are going to run legislation to extend that committee for another year, and really hope that once we get out of an election cycle and that they've got, having gotten into the meat of some of these issues, they can make more progress if they have another year to work on it. So that's, as far as I know, the only legislation that committee intends to pursue. That could change, and we may get more information at the committee meeting on Friday. I think we will see, I know we will see some legislation. You all may remember last year there was a bill, it was House Bill 1222, and it had to do with once a program is in place, do we ever kind of go back and look at it and see if it's doing what we thought it was going to do? it was one of those things that I think a lot of people liked the idea. The details were really hard to write and come up with. You know, who does it? How much does it cost? There are a lot of details that really matter in that. I think legislation along those lines is coming back. I don't think it will look exactly like last year's. There were some good lessons learned from the experience last year in terms of needing to be pretty solid on some of those details. So that will be one topic of conversation. We have talked here in this context about dyslexia. There is a great deal of interest in moving some legislation around dyslexia. You all asked for a variety of research and follow-ups after the last board meeting, and I believe that information was distributed to you. I think
We're still working on it.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
There was a lot of information requested, so.
Oh, okay. My apologies. Well, okay, then I'll give you a sneak preview. The sneak preview is that a lot of states have adopted dyslexia legislation. There's very little research around has it actually made a difference. And not to say it has or it hasn't, there's just very little even attempt to answer that question. So that's, there you go. There's your sneak preview for your reading for next month. Multi-district onlines.
Wait, don't go away
Oh, sure.
from that
Okay.
topic.
Sure.
So, to the extent that you anticipate some legislation about that, Commissioner, when do you think that we can get some background, some answers to our questions so that as we look at the bill, we have a sense
Yeah.
of some of the details, some of the things we wanted to learn?
Right, so I think I'm just gonna have to refresh my memory. I think we sent you some of the information out. There were a whole lot of questions. I think we sent like an ACS report out that
You did.
kind of did a mapping of what other states are doing on this topic. So we got to a lot of them, but there were some more detailed level questions that you all had that take more research. So I'm gonna have to get back to you on where we're at with the time frame on that.
Thank you.
You know, and this is this was a topic that was discussed quite a bit in the early childhood interim committee. They ultimately decided not to run legislation out of that committee, partly because dyslexia is bigger than just an early childhood issue, partly because I think they just weren't quite ready with an idea that made sense in a legislative proposal. So, but what has been talked about fairly broadly out there is a lot of people care about this, and a lot of people have been talking about it. There has not been an opportunity for entities that might have different perspectives to kind of share those perspectives with each other. The conversations have been pretty siloed, right? So parents, parents talk to other parents, school districts talk to other school districts, and I just use that as an example, but the dialogue between those groups maybe has not had a chance to be as mature as it should be if we're going to propose significant legislation or significant things that cost a lot of money. So some sort of task force or working group to in a formal way bring all the voices that need to be part of that conversation to the table, I think is something people are pretty interested in and is a possibility. The other component of it is really trying to think strategically about what we're already doing, particularly with the READ Act. Some of the assessments used in the READ Act, in that work, can point to markers of dyslexia. So to be clear, they cannot diagnose dyslexia, and it's not true that all of the ones on the state approved list can do this, but some of the ones already in use by districts can point to markers. And so there's some interest in thinking about that, and maybe we should kind of test that or provide more professional development to teachers so that they can say, okay, if sorry, this is clearly not my level of expertise, but if the student scored wrong on questions 1, 2, and 3, maybe it's a dyslexia thing, and if I do this, that, and the other in terms of my reading instruction for that child, maybe that will help. So, you know, trying to just, and again, I totally acknowledge those are very broad concepts. I'm not a teacher. You can laugh at me in my language. I did meet with my daughter's math teacher at 7:15 this morning, so I try to be an involved parent, but I acknowledge I'm not a teacher. So those are some of the broad concepts that are being talked about right now. That is not an exhaustive list. It's not an exclusive list. There are other things being talked about. If you all have other ideas you want me to make sure part of the evolving conversation, please let me know.
Board Member Flores, go ahead.
Thank you. I just have something that, research that I read on Idaho and the use of social impact bonds, which have been mentioned by our governor-elect. And this is in use for early childhood and kindergarten. I think it didn't work well in Idaho using those social impact bonds. The people that were in charge did not really do the testing that needed to be done. And so, you know, you have to catch those kids really early on, and as early as possible in order to really get remediation that's done early. And it wasn't caught because they just either didn't know, didn't spend the money to get those kids tested. And we need to really look at that and be wary of just saying we're going to use social impact bonds, you know, to support early childhood education. Just be wary.
So let's get back to the reading and the READ Act and all that
It is
stuff.
about reading.
You're right,
Sure.
but
Well, and I think the comments are aligned in that my takeaway when we had the dyslexia conversation from you all on a big picture last time was wanting to make sure that if you all as a board end up supporting something, and if the state ends up doing something, that it be based in the research, right? That we not just pursue a policy that feels good, but that to the extent possible, we try to be very focused on what has really worked in other places. So, you know, I'm mindful of that as I move through all of this on your
but
behalf.
my concern right now is that we just focus on dyslexia. There are a lot of other challenges that students have in terms of learning how to read, and if we feel that we have solved a problem by just biting off 20%, we've still got another 40% of third graders who aren't reading. And so I think to the extent that we can do some research, not just for that area, but basically for early reading,
Okay.
reading by
And-
third grade, we might capture a whole lot more.
And
Board
this-
Member Goff?
And this is what I was talking
Ma'am?
about, excuse me, because
Ma'am?
Idaho did do
Yeah.
that study, and they used social
Okay.
impact bonds,
Okay, Madam
and they failed. So,
Just wait your turn, okay?
thank you.
Just information, Kansas has recently come out with some new policy, and I believe their state board's been pretty heavily involved in that, so we can check that.
Yeah.
Well, and I am mindful as well as I, again, just participate in these kind of preliminary exploratory conversations on your behalf of something that Madam Chair said to me when we talked about it recently, of making sure to carry that message that, yeah, this is important and this is a component of the reading challenge we have in our state. It is not the totality of it. So I'm trying to remember to reinforce that.
Right, and looking what folks have done in a broader way. I mean, it was the intent of the READ Act. It was the intent of the READ Act to catch a certain portion of the students who aren't reading, but we want all of those kids reading, and so.
I think you will see the legislature pay some attention to the READ Act this year.
Good, that'd be
So.
great. Board Member Sheffield?
I was just going to say, what would be helpful is to really look deeply at the effectiveness of the READ Act or lack thereof and analyze why that's the case, because we know that a lot of the research suggests that what kids need who are underachieving in reading is many of them are the same interventions that kids need who are identified as dyslexic.
Exactly, right.
So, I mean, it's not really a completely different group.
Right.
There's a lot in common there.
Madam Chair, Dr. Shuffle, again, I have good reason to think that will be an active conversation at the Capitol this year. So I think all the things you're raising, other people are thinking about too, and we'll see some, hopefully, constructive dialogue around them. Okay, so I moved too quickly before, okay. So multi-district online, I think, is an area that some, not us, but others are exploring, just some options around that. I don't know what there's some concern on the part of some stakeholders about transfers in and transfers out and when those happen and how those happen. The ability of a school district to oversee a multi-district online is, just the skill that it takes to do that and do that well, are all things that school boards in particular have been talking about. I mean, I guess I don't need to be all that mysterious because I think CASB has talked about this publicly. So I haven't seen anything from them, but they have let us know that it's a topic that they're interested in, and we'll see where that goes. We talked about school finance already. We saw some of this last year. I think we will see even more of it this year, and that is an emphasis on mental health and kind of some suicide and bullying and some of those related issues in our schools. There's just, we continue to hear of really sad, tragic things that are happening with kids in our schools, and I think the legislature is paying attention to that. And what exactly they will do, I don't know. This is where local control does really come into play, right? Because at a state level, you can do certain things, but districts have the authority and the responsibility to do a lot more of the day-to-day specific work. So this is not cloudy at all for me. There will absolutely be legislation on this topic. There will absolutely be discussion about this. The form of it is to be determined. There will be, on top of those big things, first of all, there'll be some big things that I totally missed. There'll be a ton of little teeny tiny things, that we see every year. So please don't think that that's all you're going to have to think and talk about, especially ledge contacts. Steve and Jane, you'll get to address a wider variety of topics.
So
Board Member Goff?
is there any mention at all of anything related to special ed?
Madam Chair, Board Member Goff, yes, but my assessment of it is it's in a way that's setting up for a 2020 legislative conversation versus a 2019 legislative conversation. I think it's not as far down the path, for example, as the dyslexia conversation, and so we may see something, but I think that there's a growing groundswell in a variety of places around special ed and those topics and the funding and just all of that. My guess is it won't mature for a little bit longer. I could be wrong.
And related, which I can expound on if everybody wants, sort of tangential to the Claire Davis Act, but also some things about the complaint process. I'm being really general there, but we did hear a little allusion to it yesterday in public comment, but there have been some other tidbits of conversation about that, and
Yeah.
I'm just curious. So I don't know.
I mean, the
I
Claire
don't-
Davis Act has been, controversial since its adoption. I think they're challenging situations, and I personally believe that most if not all of our principals and teachers and schools and districts want to do the right thing, are working to do the right thing. It can be a challenging environment to operate within. I mean, again, I was in my daughter's school at 7:15 this morning, and you see. First of all, I realized over and over again why I would be a terrible teacher, because I have no patience for 300 middle school girls. But you just visually you can see some of there's so much going on with these kids. There's so much happening and so much that our folks are dealing with. So something like the Claire Davis Act, on the ground in daily practice can be challenging. So I don't really think we'll see legislation to overturn Claire Davis. I think conversations about how it's implemented around, what a threat looks like, what you do if there's a threat, violence against others versus suicide or violence against oneself, and how those are differentiated, potentially.
We can all talk about it if we need to later. It's really what's in my head right now are some of the finer points of the act and how it impacts finer points of the population.
Okay. Well, let's
So
have a
it's
follow-up
not-
conversation.
Yeah, we can.
Okay. Any other rumors you guys are hearing that you want me to try to address? It's always fun to address rumors on the fly, but I'm happy to try.
Go ahead.
There's money. Is there going to be more money for education?
Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, there is money. there's never as much money as it looks like there is when there's new money, given the way our budget process works, because we don't have zero-sum budgeting in our state. We kind of start with last year, and there's a handful of areas, K-12 being one of them, where just pure inflation and enrollment growth lead to pretty big increases year to year. And I'm primarily thinking the Medicaid system being, the other main driver there. So there is money. There's not $1 billion extra dollars lying around. Absolutely, I think some of that will go to K-12. I think the question is in what form, right? So does it go through the school finance formula, or does it go for full-day kindergarten, for example, for more targeted uses? So. All right, thank you all.
Thank you.
See you in January.
Sorry, I'm just slow.
Ms. Birdsall, do we need to wait for?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Chance we could deal with item 10, since we got about 30 minutes.
We don't have we have 10, I don't know if that clock's right or not, but we only have 7 minutes to kill.
It's at 10:30.
Yeah, 10:30, we've got a half hour.
Oh, are you serious?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Well,
we're
that's
way
what he's
ahead of
saying,
schedule.
that's for 10:01, it's
Yay.
30
No.
minutes.
Is there something, so your staff's outside, you say?
Yeah.
Listen.
Commissioner, would you want to do your?
Possibly. I don't think I can get it done in a half hour, but we can give it a shot.
That's all they gave
Try that.
you.
Do we want to do mine?
That's all we gave you.
Stingy busy.
I know.
Thinking I would. Yep.
Yeah, that's both of these items. Unless you want to take a 30-minute break.
No, we can.
Are you okay with that?
Yeah, do you want to pass out the?
Do you want to drive or do you want
I think I need to drive.
Are we going to 10:01?
Are we going to 10:01?
I confess that I'm a little.
What number are we going to on the agenda? Is it 10:01?
12.01.
Oh, 12.
Thank
Okay.
you.
We jumped again. 12. Commissioner's report. Okay.
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 Can I have one? Yeah, just go.
Start playing.
It's better right now than later.
Prime time.
She does that and then she leaves. Just a second. I gotta find it on the agenda now. 12:01. The last item on the agenda
Thanks. Thank you.
is an
Board Member
update on
Rankin.
CDE
Right.
strategic plan. Commissioner?
Yes, thank you, Board Member Rankin. So for the Commissioners' report this month, we decided to, per your request, give an update on our strategic plan. This is also going to be either very similar or almost identical to the presentation we give to the SMART Act hearing. So if you recall, every year we are required to give an update to our strategic plan to the legislative committee that's also known as the SMART Act. And so this is our chance to share it with you. Happy to take feedback on it as well. But this will also be very similar to what we're sharing with them. Let's see how we get this moving here.
On the side, there's an on-off.
There's an on-off, okay. Okay. Got it. Hey, it's just, really fancy user error. Okay, so obviously we don't need to go through all of this, but like I said, this is the same presentation we're going to be giving to the SMART Act. So we always review our CDE responsibilities, and we give a short 2018 in review, and then we dive into our performance plan. So, as you all know, part of your job and our job along with you is to implement state and federal laws, disperse state and federal funds, hold schools and districts accountable for performance, license educators, and provide public transparency of performance and financial data. So we do try to keep these pretty high level. We don't go into every single piece that we do, so the major components. And then this is our most up-to-date sort of coverage around what we do. So 178 schools, 54,000 plus educators, 533 superintendents, assistant SUPs, and BOCES directors, 1,800 schools, and 910,000 public school students. So our sort of year in review is, and you all are greatly familiar with this because you were a part of all of this, adopted the revised Colorado academic standards as required per statute every 6 years. We received approval of our ESSA plan. We kicked off and implemented a new school support grant process, which you guys have heard about as sort of the EASY application. You heard a little bit about that yesterday. We've updated our licensure rules and also included support and professional development requirements for our English language learners. We're continuously updating our teacher quality standards and our evaluation rubrics that go with that per feedback from our districts around the evaluation process. We've established per statute a working group on the READ plan effectiveness, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Implemented lots of grants on teacher supports. You're going to hear about that in a few minutes, and also computer science education, which you all championed, and so that was really exciting. Obviously, a big part of your work over the past 2 years has been these accountability hearings and progress monitoring, and so we wanted to highlight that for the SMART committee. And then provided leadership and support for our the Governor's Education Leadership Council. That's been a big part of our work this year. So the goals that are in our strategic plan are these 4 goals, and we're going to go through sort of our progress on them. So our first one, and these are our aspirational goals, right? That schools needing academic improvement will raise and maintain their performance. That students will earn a post-secondary credential, degree, or certificate in or after high school. So we really want to start blurring those lines between high school and post-secondary and workforce credentials, and we've seen some nice improvements there. Our historically underserved students will achieve academic expectations, and this is our focus areas on closing achievement gaps and opportunity gaps for our students. And then students will read at grade level by the end of 3rd grade. So our first goal and sort of where we're at is that over this past couple years, we've had 55% of our schools that were listed in priority improvement or in turnaround have come off the accountability clock. And so that's good. That's through a lot of really hard work from our schools and districts and teachers and students. But also with some support provided by the state, and we'll talk a little bit about sort of the differences around schools and districts that have participated in some of our supports as well. So this really means, in terms of numbers, that 179 of our schools identified it for priority improvement or turnaround in 2016. 98 of them improved their student performance enough to improve their rating to either improvement or performance. And then we will have an update for you once the 2018 results are final. And our goal on this is that by 2022, we raise this percentage to 80%. So this is a graphic of the number of students. So we often talk about schools that are on priority improvement or in turnaround. This is the number of students that are actually in those schools, because we really do want to focus at the student level. So we see a nice decline in terms of the number of students that are in our lowest performing schools over the past 3 years. But clearly, 70,000 students in priority improvement or turnaround schools is still far too many. Now, this slide kind of gets at the specific work we do at CDE to support our schools coming off of those lowest 2 performance categories. So you'll see these are 2 of our programs that we work hard on, that we see some good outcomes in, Connect for Success and our Turnaround Network outcomes. And what this pie chart shows is that if 100% of the schools and districts entering the Connect for Success program were priority improvement or turnaround, 70% by the end of that program were at improvement or performance. So we see sort of a higher rate of improving if they're a part of that program that we institute. We also see a similar pattern for folks in our turnaround network, that 71% of those schools and districts improve to either an improvement or a performance status. So we do think that this is some good outcomes for some of the programs and the grant programs we run, and that has given us some of the impetus to talk with you all about our budget and potentially actually asking for some supports to increase these areas, because we see quite a big difference from just the average improvement rates.
Commissioner, may I ask a question? Sure. In the Connect for Success outcomes, could you give a little bit more, just to remind me, the difference between the Connect for Success and the Turnaround Network?
Sure. So the Connect for Success program is a program where we match schools and districts with schools and districts with similar demographics and similar challenges. And they go to those schools, and there's a whole programming around it where they can visit how those other schools have seen success. So for some of our schools and districts that have really what we sometimes call beating the odds, we bring other schools to those locations and provide mentoring and support, and they see what those schools have done. The Turnaround Network is a little different in that that's really focused on leadership support and how do you develop school leaders to have that laser-like focus to turn around either schools or districts. And so it's less about going to visit all these other schools and districts, and it's more about sort of the professional development and mentoring of school principals and others.
Thank you.
Do these schools, like Connect for Success, do these schools change year to year? Is there a certain qualification for that school that could allow someone else to be in that Connect for Success network kind of thing?
Yeah, I'm gonna phone a friend.
So what's shown up there is the first cohort of Connect for Success, and we add cohorts every year. Right now, yesterday was the due date for the EASY application grant for people to put in, so we had new applicants coming for the following year that want to be in either Connect for Success or the network.
So
we
they
add
want
more.
to already be in it where other
Yep.
people see them, or these are people that want to get in it to visit other schools? Which side of the coin is that you're
Sorry.
talking about?
So other ones applying to participate to get to learn from those high achieving
I got it.
schools.
How
But
many high achieving? How many high achieving ones are?
I think there are about 5 or 6. But
Okay.
the PATS team, they've been working to identify more, and they
get
had
it.
started with elementaries and now have added some middle schools in there.
I
and
was just
ACs,
curious,
so.
and that makes
Yeah.
sense, and I can see where that would grow.
Yes.
Okay.
And actually, what's really neat is that one of the goals of the schools that enter to learn from the other schools that are in that grant program, they're very quickly motivated. They want to be the high achieving school. They want to get to be that mentor school. And it's a really beautiful thing to see, like, that's what people are focusing on, is wanting to learn well enough that they can help their fellow schools
Especially
in
when
the
they're
state.
not in the front range.
Yep.
Thanks
Absolutely.
for shining
Especially-
that spotlight.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
So this is our post-secondary readiness goal is often measured by sort of how what our graduation looks like, and our 6-year graduation rate looks at 85%. And so that's a really high percentage. I do want to just talk about the 6-year rate for a minute. So this is our 6-year rate. This is also disaggregated by some of our historically underserved students. Colorado has historically had a 4-year, a 5-year, and a 6-year graduation rate, partially because we believe it's not good to push students out of high school if they need a little extra time. So, for example, students on individual education plans, or special education students, or just students that need a little more time to meet those graduation requirements. We have often said that we would rather them have a little more time and have it be a little more competency-based than pushing them out of the system. So it's been really important for us to highlight that we have a 4-year, a 5-year, and a 6-year rate. Our 4-year rate, because I know everybody is interested in that, is 79%. And then you can see how much improvement we can make on that when we let students have a little extra time. The 5-year rate, so just giving students 1 more year, increases the graduation rate to 84%. Some of the other metrics we look at in terms of our post-secondary and workforce readiness goals are around concurrent enrollment. This is a keen interest of you all as well. You want us to increase our access to concurrent enrollment for our students. This helps in so many ways. It actually decreases remediation rates. It provides students a head start when they're headed into college or post-secondary with credits that they already have that they don't have to pay for. And you can see we see a nice trajectory upward towards our students participating in concurrent enrollment over from 2012 to 2017. So right now we have about 1 in 3 students that have taken courses in high school for college credit. 85, and another important piece, which is why we see this as such an important metric, 85% of students that are enrolled in concurrent enrollment do indeed enroll in some sort of college or post-secondary education. So that jump start really does help them seamlessly move into the next phase. So our historically underserved, our sort of achievement gap goal, you know, we know that persistent gaps continue to exist between certain student groups and performance targets. And so this is something that really our whole department is trying to look at throughout all of the different initiatives we have. So for example, our 3rd grade reading goal. You know, we really want to make sure all of our employees that are working on supporting districts in 3rd grade reading are disaggregating that information and saying, how do we support our most at-risk students in achieving this goal? Sorry. My eyes are struggling with the back and forth, and I didn't bring my reading glasses down, which I now need, so that's fun. Oh, thanks.
Maybe you hit 40, huh?
I know, yeah, okay, I can't see that. So these essentially show the gaps, right? The historically underserved students achieving expectations. This is math in 5th grade. The orange bar is 2017, and the green bar is 2018. So you still see a lot of gaps in terms of the percent of students meeting or exceeding expectations. So it's important for us to note that we measure the gaps by students meeting the expectations, not just closing the gaps, right? Because we want all students to meet or exceed expectations. So you see some pretty big gaps here, and this helps us to identify where we need to focus in terms of supporting our schools and districts. So let's see, I think I skipped. This is math. So you do see some, I mean, I barely want to call those increases. We actually see some more increases in math in terms of achievement from 2017 to 2018. So we see things for, you know, at least headed on that upward trend, but the percentages are very small. So I don't want to overstate that, but at least say that things are headed in the right direction. This is our growth for students with disabilities. We really were very concerned about seeing the gaps in our students with disabilities, and so we've really doubled down our efforts to dig into this data and then look at new ways to support. So we have seen, you still see gaps here. This is our growth for students with disabilities in English language arts. Those students with an IEP is in the light green, and non-IEP. Still see gaps there, and we continue. It's not enough to catch up, so we need to continue to dig into how we can support districts and schools here. Yes.
Sorry, I just wanted to clarify on those high school rates, because so many IEP students transitioned into a 504 plan, would that include 504 kids, or is that just strictly kids with an IEP in the high school?
I am not sure. We might have to get back to you. Since we moved this presentation up, I'm not sure all of my support team is here.
No problem.
To tell me what. Oh, thanks. Somebody brought my real glasses down. Thank you.
You have friends.
I have friends. Oh, so much better. Board member McClellan, we'll have to get back to you on what's included in that number. But thank you. All right. So this is our growth for students with disabilities on math. And again, we see pretty flat growth there around our non-IEPs. We see some fluctuations and some improvements in high school, a little dip in middle school there, and just a tiny little improvement there in elementary school. So it's certainly something we want to focus on moving forward. So our reading by third grade. So right now we have 40% of our students across the state are meeting or exceeding expectation in English language arts. So this has been a metric that we keep kind of going back and forth on, because we don't have a straight metric for reading and literacy. So English language arts includes a lot of reading, writing, and communicating, comprehension, all sorts of things. So it's sort of bundled into our CMAS test here, and so we're at 40% there. We have seen an increase of 2.2% since 2015, and you see that here.
Commissioner, Board Member Durham.
Sorry.
Just, I don't mean to be critical, but this,
No.
the way this is displayed, you would almost consider it a positive, where I would consider it a negative. And in some ways, and I think it relates to a discussion that at least I want to hopefully have before I have to leave today, about the disconnect between student performance and ratings of schools. But I mean, it's if you were to look at this way, you'd say that's a good thing. I mean, and it's really not a good thing. It's, you know, if we're an 80%, it would be a good thing. And so I think to some extent we need to make sure we're not putting too much eyewash on where the holes still are in the system. And so I just, as I said, I don't mean to get critical.
Yeah.
That's a number we need to work on. It's an important number. It just, I think, needs to be displayed differently.
Okay. Yes, thank you for that feedback.
So there are a couple things that I would add to that. Well, only one that I can remember right now. This Colorado's results do mirror the NAEP scores, so it's it's national. Oh, I know. The second thing I was gonna. Is there a way for us to structure the scoring of our third grade assessment so that we are Don't look at me like that.
Sorry.
So that we capture the reading portion separately?
My initial answer is, I think, probably not.
It's
just
a Joyce
because
Zerkowski question?
It is a Joyce Zerkowski question, but it's also, you know, I mean, it's also integrated, that I believe that would be very difficult.
Okay. That's the answer.
So,
Okay.
Board Member Flores?
I know that you're interested in percentile rank. I know that's very important to you. In my district, Denver, parents are concerned about whether they are meeting the reading expectations in third grade. So they want to know, I mean, they don't want to know the percentile rank. They want to know, are they or are they not on track? I know that they get a number, but that number doesn't tell them whether they are. And I know you can figure it out if you read this or that, but that's very important because they want to know which schools, remember, we have
Are you
charter
talking about the
schools, we have
individual reporting to
schools.
parents?
Yes.
Okay.
Whether they're at grade level or not at grade level. That is very important. And that's because we have so many schools and they have a choice of going to schools and they want to know the ranking of those schools and where they want to send their children to. So that's my district.
Madam Chair,
Board Member Durham?
I just have one quick observation. Yesterday, when we were going through the Adams 14 and the Pueblo 2 junior highs, as I read all those materials, the amount, it's really amazing how much data we have in all the different formats, almost so much data that it becomes overwhelming in trying to put it to productive use. And I think a goal ought to be able to distill that in a way that is absolutely meaningful to a parent, that you don't have to refer to chart 2 to understand what it is you get in the first display. And so I think if we could work on changing those parental reports really at all levels so there just is no mystery about my child is performing at X level and my school is performing at Y level, I think we would do everyone a great service if we could bleed out the almost too much information so that it's really very black and white and very straightforward.
yes, thank you, Board Member Durham. We are actually turning our attention to that exact thing, is to create some parent-friendly, very simplified reports. Our performance frameworks are very complex and difficult to understand. When I have trouble understanding them, I know that we've got a problem. Not that I'm that great, but
But if
still.
So actually, you're saying, though, two things.
Yeah.
One, we're talking about the complexity.
yes,
The other ones, we're talking about the volume.
Well,
And
it's-
there's some pretty good research that says when you provide too much information,
right, it's
the tendency then is to simplify, and to actually use a minimal amount. You just pick one or two, which is why earnings per share is a huge figure. If you look at an annual report, there is so much data in there that a normal shareholder isn't gonna look at. And so what's happened is they've just compressed their decision-making to something really simple as opposed to using 5 or 6 or 8 measures that matter. And we have the same challenge for our parents.
Well,
I think all of the data that is available, and it really showed in the analysis of Adams 14 and Pueblo 60, when you looked at all of the things you could know about various disaggregated groups, it really is, it's very positive, the fact that we have that data and we can know it, but being able to keep it, when you get it out to the parental, to the parent level, being able to keep it and put it in a usable format
It's critical.
is, You know, it's like, if there is too much data, it's almost as if there's none,
Right,
because
that's
no
my
one
point.
can
Yeah.
plow through
Yeah.
it.
And so
Board
we're
Member
asking,
Rankin, one
we're
moment,
asking for
one moment, please. Board Member Rankin.
Well,
You
I
know,
just-
one of the,
Just
the
wait.
really, I think what you're saying is absolutely true, and I think what the problem is, I go back to this financial transparency icon on our website. We start at that, what I would call that parent level. It's such a high level. And depending what you want, you can auger in and you can get down into the weeds and you can separate out all the finances of spending and where the money is coming from. So you're starting, in my opinion, at that parent level. When we get into this information we're talking about, Adams, and on some of the other websites, they start with all of that stuff thrown together, and that just makes people turn away. So I agree with you, and then I can go back to old school like we're from. And everybody understands ABCD, but we don't do that anymore, you know, that sort of thing. There are some things that can kind of make it easier, and I think the best thing is more information that's more easily understood by stakeholders and parents. And I know our commissioner understands that, and to match what we have with the financial transparency with some of this high-level education where parents can find it, I think is a real key. And I know in the department they understand that, and we're working on it. The dashboard that I learned about, I mean, that's a whole new area for me, and we're getting there. We're getting there.
We
Yeah.
got work to do.
Board Member Flores.
Well, all I just wanted to synthesize was that I think these two are important. That percentile rank is something that parents want. They also want to know whether they're at grade level or not grade level, and for that to show. I think those things are very important. Percentile rank for his district, and whether they're at grade level or not grade level is very important for my district. And that's what
But we can't have that.
I'm asked
Parents
about,
have that.
and that it be made easy for parents.
Madam Chair?
And I spoke with our person about that.
Right.
Board Member Durham. I'm sorry, Kate.
I think just one closing comment. I think we've, relative to another item on the agenda, which does relate to this, that we've received lots of comments that in changing anything we do, it would embarrass, make people look worse than they look today. I don't think there's any intent to get to that,
No.
and yet you do have to ultimately square the results given to schools and districts with the reality of student performance. And I think right now we're failing that. It's painful, and I think somehow there are those who would like to attribute some nefarious motive to trying to equalize those two things. But realistically, if they're going to mean something, if the rating of school is going to mean something, then it's going to have to at least have some correlation to student performance.
Thank you. And just to clarify, Board Member Flores, in the individual reports that parents get, they do have
And I did-
both whether the student is on grade level and the percentile.
But I
So-
think it should be kind of more, not to the side, but
More prominent.
more prominent.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So as Ms. Mello said earlier today, and as you all have been asking, and also the legislature has been asking, we did add some additional analysis on our READ Act work, because we know that they're going to be interested in this. And we actually even have more in-depth slides on this, and I know you're particularly interested in it, so we can schedule another session where we dive into this. But this is our percentage of K through 3 students identified with a significant reading deficiency through the READ Act. So you'll see from 2012 all the way up to 2018. And you see a little fluctuation there. But you know, we are identifying about 15.5% of our K through 3 students with a significant reading deficiency at this point. Now, this is the more important piece, and ones where we do see that we have quite a bit of work to do. So this is once you identify those students and you start giving them the interventions that they deserve, how many are moving off and no longer are identified as a significant, having a significant reading deficiency. So you see the 6% and the 18%, we're sort of moving those folks in the right direction. But we still have, at the end, sort of at third grade, 60% are still identified with a significant reading deficiency. So that does point to sort of some challenges with how we're implementing those interventions, and are those interventions working. So these are some new analyses that we've just done, so we still have more work to do in digging into it. But Board Member Shuffle?
Is it accurate to say that the bar for getting them off the READ plan is a fairly low bar? Because you still have a big gap between the 15% of students that are being identified with SRD, and then you have
40%.
another 45% that are still in there that are not proficient in reading. And so are they just getting over the line and still in a very at-risk zone?
Right. So you have to achieve grade level to get off the plan. So that's actually a pretty high bar to get off a READ plan. You could still get off being identified as having a significant reading deficiency if you're not at grade level. So we can talk more about that now, or dive into sort of where that gap is, because we always talk about that. There's a lot in between here that we can't fully measure, so we don't totally know what's going on there.
So you don't see students who are getting off the READ plan slipping back into needing the READ plan, or that's a different question?
That might be a different question. Do you want to come up, Dr. Colsman? This is the problem with me doing the high-level
Also,
presentation.
can I just ask,
Yeah.
maybe might also fit, so students identified with a significant reading deficiency, that's not just I mean, a student may not read at grade level, but wouldn't be necessarily identified.
Exactly.
Because this
Yeah.
is more of we're looking at causal relationships here as opposed to results. So there are a number of students who don't read at grade level who are not identified with
Yes.
a serious reading deficiency.
That's what
Okay.
Dr. Sheffel's
Thank you.
suggesting. There are a whole lot
Yeah.
of them, and what do we do for those kids?
Right, yeah,
That's,
that's a good question, it's a very good question.
So, Dr. Sheffel, to get at your question, so it is a higher bar to get off of a READ plan, because there needs to be a body of evidence that students have met grade level expectations, and we know that's a higher bar. Because if we look at our CMAS results, we see that only about 40% of our students are meeting or exceeding those expectations. So it's a high bar. It is a lower bar to be identified with a significant reading deficiency. I would say there's much more fluctuation above and below the line for significant reading deficiency than there is for getting off of a READ plan. But to Mr. Durham's point, there are a number of students who are in that gap area, and they may be just above the bar in kindergarten, but what we see is after first grade, they go below that bar, because the bar is that threshold is higher in terms of what we're expecting of kids. We do see some fluctuation a lot between the SRD and not SRD. But students who, once they're identified with a significant reading deficiency, need to stay on a READ plan until they reach grade level expectations.
Okay, you should probably just stay here for the next couple slides. All right. So this is when we're identifying students with a significant reading deficiency. So you see this kindergarten, first, second, third, and fluctuating or exempt. And so you'll see that the majority of students that are identified in the first grade. And we think that this spike at the first grade is due to sort of the expectation of mastery of sort of key foundational reading skills at that time. And so that's a little bit more of a marker to identify our students at this point.
We also don't require kindergarten. We don't require
true.
kindergarten in Colorado.
Yeah, so
So-
there's less students.
I don't, does anyone know what percentage of the students that come to first grade were not in public kindergarten?
Off the top of my head, I don't have that statistic, but the vast majority of students are actually going to kindergarten in Colorado. It is a very small percent of students who do not go to public kindergarten.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Does TS Gold have anything to do with these numbers? I mean, have you noticed any?
Dr. Postman? Sorry.
TS Gold have anything to do with these numbers, like first grade, compared to before we had such an evaluation process? Or
So-
programs such as that?
So what I would say is it really has, and probably Dr. Shuffle knows the reading assessments in a much greater depth than I do, but it really has to do with the reading assessments themselves. So Teaching Strategies Gold is a whole child assessment. It only has a kind of a really broad look at literacy, but all kindergartners are assessed with a READ Act assessment. It's just that the bar for what we're expecting for kindergartners is different than what we're expecting at first grade. And I would say that actually first grade is probably, and I'm assuming Dr. Shuffle will correct me if I'm wrong, really is the critical year for kids. It is, if we don't see the kids reaching those expectations there, it's really, really hard to make that up.
Okay, so this is also some important information on the students that are identified with significant reading deficiencies. So, as I said, in 2018, 15.5% of kindergarten through third grade students were identified with a significant reading deficiency. 49.6% of those students were also identified with a disability. And then 60% of those students were identified with a specific learning disability, which includes dyslexia, but is not limited to dyslexia. So this also sort of starts to disaggregate who we're identifying, and this type of information can also help our staff and folks like Dr. Shuffle and others really support making sure the interventions we're using are appropriate and effective. So I know that we're over time and we have a timed rulemaking hearing. The rest of the presentation sort of talks about some of the initiatives that we're doing that support that goal work. I'm happy to either continue some of that later today when it was originally scheduled, or at the
Can you do it in 5 minutes?
5 minutes, possibly,
We don't ask questions.
if you don't ask questions.
Okay. We will not ask questions.
Talk us into it.
Okay. So this is the graphic we use just to talk about those 5 key initiatives there, the little beehive in the middle. So focusing on our strong foundations, which is all of our P through 3 literacy work and everything encompassed there. More options includes all of our post-secondary and workforce readiness, the concurrent enrollment, making sure we have apprenticeships, CTE programs, good healthy charter school options for schools. Then we also have our Quality Schools Initiative. You know about that a lot because you hear about it a lot. All of the Connect for Success programs, the turnaround programs, and our Educators Matter around how we support educators and the pipeline. So our All Means All initiative is around making sure we're disaggregating that data in all of the work we do so that we're identifying and supporting the schools in closing those achievement gaps and those opportunity gaps. And so some of the things we're working on is that professional development for teachers to support English language learners. We're doing some additional piloting of school-wide literacy programs on that structured literacy program work because we know those are some research-based elements, and so we want to expand those types of programs across the state. And again, focusing on our earliest, that P through 3 area, we think will give us the biggest gains for the future. So we really focus in our early strong foundations work. Our Educators Matter, these are just a few, but as you know, there were about 8 different pieces of legislation passed last year around recruiting and retaining educators, helping school districts grow their own programs, helping expand teacher residency programs, helping expand alternative education preparation programs. So there's a lot going on there. We're thinking about new ways to support our school principals. And we'll talk with you a little bit more about that and get some feedback from you on that piece. And then also thinking about how can we think statewide about educator recruitment and think a little bit more systemically about that. That's really at a nascent time as well, so we don't have too much to share on that, but we're developing some plans around what that could potentially look like. We've talked a lot about the strong foundations, but we do see within the READ work that we do, our schools and districts that have our early literacy grant are seeing better outcomes for students and seeing higher gains. So we really want to focus on expanding the early literacy grant programs and the use of our early literacy assessment tools and programs that come alongside that, because we're seeing better outcomes there. And then really aligning our preschool through 3rd grade supports for sort of that holistic approach to supporting literacy in schools. You guys know a lot about this Quality Schools because you have been spending the majority of your time in this area. So our school transformation grants, all of our programs, Connect for Success and others, really helping them think systemically about how to move their schools up, off the clock, and permanently off the clock. More options. There's a lot of exciting work going on here. We're really trying to foster more work-based learning opportunities for students. So this includes career and tech ed work, apprenticeships, internships, but it's connecting that relevancy of the workforce to what's going on in the school and learning in the school. And we've actually seen quite a bit of increase in schools doing industry recognized credentials, pre-apprenticeship work, internship programs, computer science work, and we see in these schools there's a much greater engagement and relevancy for students, and this obviously feeds right into our post-secondary and workforce readiness goal. Expanding concurrent enrollment opportunities is a clear laser-like focus for us because it has a lot of different positive outcomes for students. And then enhancing quality choices for students by developing and supporting effective charter schools. I mean, you saw that we just received the grant from the federal government to help new startups come and work through our system. And then organizational excellence, we do have a focus here at CDE on making sure that our processes are quality, effective, efficient. We're always focusing on excellent customer service to our districts and our schools, continuously improving sort of implementation process, always working on things like licensure, school finance, making sure our data gets turned around quickly, our assessment data, all of those things are internal processes that we continue to work on and improve. And that last piece is, to your point earlier today, we have a core focus right now on developing better reporting of public data to sort of ease that understanding. And so we have a cross-sector or a cross-organizational work group on thinking about all of our reporting processes and how to make it more seamless and easy to understand for our public.
Outstanding.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, that was really good. Thank you, Katie. So I think that one of the things you were hoping for was any feedback from us if we had it before you go to the SMART.
Yep.
And can we save that for later if in fact, colleagues, you have some thoughts to share with Katie before the SMART Act?
Yep. And
we'll save that for later this afternoon so we can get on with our hearing. Does that work?
Yes.
Excellent, thank you. Thanks, Katie. So the Colorado Board of Education will now conduct a public rulemaking hearing for the rules for the administration of the Retaining Teachers Grant Program 1 CCR 301-102. State Board voted to approve the notice of rulemaking at its September 12, 2018 board meeting. A hearing to promulgate these rules was made known through the publication of a public notice on October 10, 2018, through the Colorado Register, and by State Board notice on November 7th, 2018. State Board is authorized to promulgate these rules pursuant to 22-2-1071C CRS. Commissioner, is staff prepared to provide an overview?
Yes, thank you. I'm going to turn this over to Dr. O'Neill and Jennifer Simons.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Good afternoon, morning. This Colleen O'Neill. I'm the Associate Commissioner of Educator Talent, joined with me by Jennifer Simons, our Educator Development Specialist. We are here today to hear from folks around 1412, our Retaining Educators Grants. I don't believe there's anybody signed up for the public hearing. Busy, is that correct? There's not.
Great.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So the purpose of this item was the hearing, which we were able to get some comments from folks, and then we are asking for a possible vote if there is a unanimous consensus for the rules for the administration of the Retaining Teachers Grant Program. As a short reminder, this is a new grant program that would be issued by the Colorado Department of Education. It was authorized under the 2018 legislative session, and it's House Bill 1814-12. This grant program is created to assist local education providers in retaining teachers by implementing one or more initiatives that are really designed to improve and or help enhance the ability of a local education provider to retain teachers. There's several allowable opportunities under that grant program. We have provided for you the redlined version of the rules, the clean rules of the version, and several comments. There were 2 Board of Education comments, and there were 6 comments from our public that were received. You have a crosswalk of those documents in front of you as well. And with that, I'm going to actually turn it over to my colleague, Jennifer Simons, to talk just a little bit about the buckets that we received as far as comments for the board's consideration.
I just have a quick question before you go there. How do you get a red line version on a brand new set of rules?
Well,
What are you redlining?
That is a great question.
That is where I was going to start.
Would you like to start?
Please
there,
go
Jennifer?
ahead, Deb.
Thank you. Thank you. That is a great segue. So the things that we redlined were actually in response to board comments at the notice of rulemaking.
Thank you.
During that meeting. Yes. So I would call your attention to first 2.1.7. So this was in response to comments from the board, clarifying what reducing teacher-student contact hours would look like, and clarifying that this would not result in decreased instruction time for students, so providing that clarification. Additionally, there were some questions about what was intended in 2.1.8, so we added some clarifying examples of what that might look like to increase the use of technology, and that included providing support to teachers to enroll in higher education courses to become qualified to teach concurrent enrollment, and also implementing technology that allows teachers to instruct students through distance learning, specifically to address needs in our rural districts. So just providing some clarifying examples there. So those were the things we redlined. Thank you for that question. And moving on to the comments that we received in written form, these fell into a couple high-level categories. Much of them were comments or concerns related to the listed allowable activities that were in statute. People had specific concerns about specific activities that were listed, and you'll see in your comment response document that staff's response to each of these is related to, these are a menu of options. None of these are mandatory under the grant, and what each of these would look like in structure would be locally decided, and how those would be implemented. Those are outlined there, but really there's not a change to those because those are in statute, so we have to include them. But what those will look like is up to local decision. Additionally, we received some helpful comments and suggestions on how the grant programs could be evaluated. Specifically, there were suggestions about analyzing return on investment as it relates to effectiveness of teachers and identifying potential unmet needs. So we'll be thinking about how to identify those through data if it's available when we do that. But that would be in business practice and not really in rule. And then there was one more item around, which one was that? So, I think I missed that one. On prioritization. So there was a question about how we might prioritize it further for high needs schools specifically, there was a question about the ESSA equity measures with high poverty and high minority schools. And our response to that is that we're currently working on a matrix to ensure that the distribution of these funds is conducted as widely and evenly as possible to meet the highest needs. So again, that would be in business practice, and that's still under development.
Great, thank you. Before we have a discussion, there is no one here to testify, right?
That is correct.
Could I have a motion, please, and then we'll get into discussion? Anybody got proposed? Thank you. Five,
You
it
got
should be
it?
5.0.
I move to approve, no, she's on 6. I move to approve the rules for the administration of the Retaining Teachers Grant Program, 1 CCR 301-102.
It's a proper motion. Board Member Rankin. Board Member Flores seconds it. Now can we have discussion?
So,
Board Member Flores?
so it was $2 million that was appropriated?
It's actually just under 3 million, it's 2.9.
Oh, 2.9.
Yes, over the course of a 3-year period.
Okay. And so, I mean, I know you stated all that, you know, it would do. You're going to target it to districts who need it. I mean, like, what I'm trying to say is, especially to districts that have large groups of minority kids, ESL kids, or
But the targeting and the matrix that we've been looking at and in conversations with our districts has been really around need and teacher turnover, and the percentage around teacher turnover, which you do see a correlation, rightfully to your point,
Right.
see a correlation between sometimes our highest need schools and districts and teacher turnover. So there is an opportunity for them to ensure that they have equitable access to this grant as well.
so that means urban, rural. How do you see that?
The matrix as we're seeing it right now is exactly similar to that, number of students and size, so that we can ensure that there's distribution for the number of students and the right size, and the percentage of funds.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Board Member Sheffel?
My question relates to 2.1 or 2.17 and 2.1.8.1. But it just relates to this issue of reduces teacher-student contact hours, but does not reduce instructional time. And how will that be thought through? Does that mean the student would have more independent learning time because it's technology supported, or paraprofessionals would be used to a greater extent?
We're leaving
what's
it completely up to the districts to make those decisions, but wanted to honor the fact that the board requested that we ensure that it's not meant to reduce instructional time, that it's meant to keep instructional time and maybe free up some time for educators to collaborate.
Does anybody feel like it would be great to put in there that you're really trying to free up a teacher so that they can do greater professional development and more engagement with peers, right? And develop their skills?
I think it could be either way. We've had recommendations from our human resource folks at the district level for 2 kind of variations. 1 to free up for professional development, yes, but 2 to free up for mentoring of our veteran teachers with some of our newer teachers that are more at-risk educators of not being able to be retained or turning over in the first couple of years.
So I guess I'd rather that it said that a teacher was working on keeping the instructional time consistent, not just with anything, but with actual teaching. I don't know, maybe that's implied, but that's one thought. I mean, I'd rather not just park kids in front of computers, you know, so that they can be busy while the teacher's being freed up to have mentoring, which is a great idea.
Exactly.
I'd rather say that there's additional instructional professionals available to support that teacher, so that you can retain them.
I second that.
I don't know.
I worry a little bit about being
Me
that
too.
specific to districts
Well,
on how they maintain their
But-
time
But there's
in our
also-
rules. Do we have a
Sure.
precedent for being that specific and?
I think the board can absolutely make that decision and be that specific in the rule. I also think it could go into the business process and the application process. which is generally where it's found is when you do the RFP process and you're evaluating the quality of the submission by the districts. It's usually found in that and how they're going to implement that particular opportunity, so that it's a little bit more broad for how are you thinking about that. It can certainly be in the rule,
Could it be,
completely up to team.
could it be stated positively instead of negatively? Instead of reducing, could it say freeing up or making available time for teachers that you're trying to retain for mentoring or professional development or other support while providing quality instruction through other educational professionals, or I don't know. I think sometimes what happens with this is kids just get
Right.
kind of parked. Well, I don't think it should be one or the other. We obviously want to serve the students first and also retain the teachers and give them opportunities. So I was just thinking maybe we could state it that way. And my other comment
Well,
is,
Could you add while retaining the quality of instruction to children while they're doing that?
I don't want to micromanage it.
We're micromanaging,
Micromanage.
I fear.
Okay, then let me move to another comment.
Well, I mean, that's just my opinion. I worry that we end up putting in a constraint. There may be something really terrific that a school district wants to offer those kids during a particular time. And I don't know that we want to talk about licensed educators being there or that kind of thing, because especially,
I'm for
yeah,
flexibility. I just don't want kids parked in front of computers.
agreed. But I don't know that you want to put that in the rule either.
No, you don't.
Board Member Rankin?
I just, I know this is an impossible situation, but I would say after or before school.
Oh,
I mean, that would
No.
eliminate your whole
yeah.
Well,
difficulty
you
with.
can't mentor. You can't be there and mentor and observe a teacher after school,
Could we say non-part?
if that's what they want to do. Again, we're telling them how to do it. Board Member McClone?
I just wanted to sound off with a vote for flexibility for local administration of this, because there are things happening in schools, like, for example, some schools have a tradition of doing certain kinds of plays and musical productions, and maybe during the time that a particular teacher is going to have some of their benefit from this program, their students can go down the hall to rehearsal. Things we wouldn't even have thought of, nor should we be thinking of them. Just want to give a vote against micromanaging, even though it's with the best of intentions, I know. But I also wanted to say thank you for the formatting of this crosswalk. It's really helpful, and I like that you got a variety of perspectives, from teachers to those whose role is to address inequities in Colorado education. You had an HR director sounding off. I think that's great. So, and even a question about job sharing. So this was great. Very helpful formatting. Thank you.
Board Member Sheffield, you weren't finished. Go ahead.
So I wanted to look at the other one, 2.1.8.1, where it says implementing technology that allows teachers to instruct students through distance learning initiatives to meet academic needs in rural settings. I know that delivery model can be very helpful when you can't attract teachers, but I also know that there's a lot of research about what distance learning models, when they work, when they're not so great. For young kids, they're not that great. And so I think to put a general statement like that kind of encourages schools to move to that delivery model without, I think,
Guardrails?
yeah,
Without
without
guardrails?
better reflection of who is it good for how long, how much. I mean, we've all been in schools a lot seeing this model implemented, and I think we lose a lot in the educational quality if we overuse technology and depend on it. We're better off getting great teachers in the classrooms, supported by technology, but not having that be the major genre of delivery.
So I guess I'd ask you, do you really want to try to put that in a rule?
No, but I don't know why it has to say that. Why are we encouraging them to instruct students through distance learning initiatives? That implies that we can't get teachers in rural settings.
Is that in the legislation?
This particular one is not in legislation. It was actually added in response to questions. I think actually from Dr. Scheffel around trying to clarify some of those things, so we may have misinterpreted that. I do, just from a former e-learning instructional design and chief learning officer that I can say that a lot of this has to do with the quality of your teacher, for sure, and we know that. I think this is another one of those, we could certainly change the rules at the board's discretion. I also think it's another thing that we could evaluate if that's the board's direction to us when we review any of the submissions or the proposals, to say this is a clear indicator, and if you can't indicate that this is supported by a teacher in the classroom that's using this technology in a more productive way, than just sitting a kid in front of a computer and saying, here you go, go for it. But if it's an actually blended model that's supported, I think it could go either way, and we will take the board's direction.
Dr. Sheffel?
I just don't, I guess I think there have been a number of incentives to move education into this online delivery approach, and I guess I'd rather not make this yet another incentive to do that.
So you'd like to eliminate that?
I guess yeah.
Okay, I'm trying to understand
Yeah.
your recommendation.
I think so. I mean, people can do that. you know,
And
but-
they do,
but,
yes.
you know, I think to put it in there almost makes it like they should do it.
Yeah.
Okay. Board Member Flores?
I would make it even more forceful and say, do not place students in front of a computer while, this is taking place.
I don't think we can put that in the
Well,
rules.
let me just say this, because I think that, it's proof over what happened 2 years ago, that that school districts didn't hear us. And it was in black and white. So I think we need to be forceful and say it so that it is understood, that do not place students in front of a computer during this time.
Board Member Durham?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dr. Shovel, do you wish to remove 2.1.8?
That would be my recommendation. I think this is an investing in people grant.
I'll make that,
Retain them.
I'll make the motion to remove 2.1.8.
Okay. May I ask for a clarification? Is it 2.1.8 or is it 2.1.8.1 that you were specifically referring to?
Yeah, and it's not the one
2.2.
about concurrent enrollment, it's about technology allowing teachers to instruct students
Okay.
through.
Point
It's
two.
2.1.8.2.
Yeah.
Board Member,
2.1.8.
Point two.
The green.
No,
Point down below.
I'm using the red line.
The,
Or blue.
0.8 is the statute. We would have to.
point, yeah, the 2.1.8 is the statute language, so the two below that,
It's the phrase implementing technology that allows
Yeah.
teachers to instruct students through distance learning initiatives to meet academic needs in rural settings.
so that's
Maybe if you get off the red line.
2.
Board Member McClellan.
I just wanted to chime in response to Dr. Flores' concern regarding children being in front of a computer. I just wanted to share once again my feelings that we should be very cautious about micromanaging. I know that in my children's schools, they have had quality instruction in computer literacy, and I don't want to hem schools in terms of what they can and cannot do while attempting to benefit from this grant program. So just because it involves a computer doesn't mean that it's necessarily a bad thing that we need to micromanage. I would remind us all that we're all sitting in front of a computer screen right now.
I'm not. Well, there.
Some of us are.
Board Member Rankin?
I'd like to second Board Member Durham's motion on 2.1.8.2 to eliminate that part of the
Okay,
document.
thank you. Commissioner, did you have something you wanted to add?
Well, we're totally happy to do this, that's fine. Just to let you guys know that we were gonna try to get the grant money out.
I realize that.
So
We'll
this will just
we'll still
delay.
do our best.
yeah.
Oh, wait a minute, can't we just drop it now?
As long as it's
We can take it out now.
We'll take it out and then.
And then
take it
vote.
out
As long as
and
it's
approve it.
unanimous.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm trying to create a path to
Yeah.
approval for today, and I
okay.
I have to
Thank you.
agree with Dr. Sheffel.
Not this, it's the next document.
So do we want to call for that first we do the amendment, right?
Yes.
Please.
2.1.8.2.
So just do a little delete on there.
Yeah, just delete.
Would you call the roll, please?
Board Member Durham,
Yes.
Board Member Flores,
Yes.
Board Member Goff,
Yes.
Board Member McClellan,
Yes.
Board Member Rankin.
Yes.
Board Member Shuffle.
Yes.
And Board Member Schroeder.
Yes.
Thank you, that amendment passes.
Thank you.
Alright,
We
now
will
I-
make
could I have,
You had a motion.
And then
redone motion. Didn't you make that motion
I
originally?
did, and Dr. Flores seconded it. Would you
Yes.
like it again?
Could you now read that motion as amended? I think you have to say as amended.
I move to approve the rules for the administration of the Retaining Teachers Grant Program, 1 CCR 301-102, as amended.
As amended. It's a proper motion.
I second it.
Thank you. Could you call that roll, please?
Board Member Durham.
Yes.
Board Member Flores.
Yes.
Board Member Goff.
Yes.
Board Member McClellan.
Yes.
Board Member Rinkin.
Yes.
Board Member Shuffle.
Yes.
Board Member Schroeder.
Yes.
Thank you. That also passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Okay,
Thank you.
got your grant. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you. We would appreciate a 10-minute break because we've been at it for a couple hours. And you don't want us squirming as we continue this process. Thank you. I know we don't look organized, but really we are. We've allowed this extra time to continue to work on the areas that we discussed yesterday. The first one would be 1601, consideration of action for Adams County School District 14 and Adams City High School, case number 17-AR-10. So thank you, colleagues, for excellent questions and thoughtful considerations of yesterday in terms of what's best for kids in Adams 14 schools. Normally, I would ask for a motion before we deliberate. However, given the complexity of what we discussed yesterday, I'd like for us yet again to each reflect on some additional items. What we came to yesterday was that we do not propose to continue the turnaround plan as it is. Also, we really are not suggesting to continue the turnaround plan and add an additional action, but instead to discontinue the turnaround plan that we directed to you last year and to take a new course of action. The external management operator that we are suggesting would have the discretion of whether to continue the current partner beyond textbooks, would also have the authority to determine the best management partner at the high school. So last night I gave you all homework to think about the details that we would want in our order to the school district or in the contract for the schools. And I'd like for us to please go around the table and add some detail. One, components of the decision-making authority that you feel should be included. The criteria for the selection of an external management operator. Thoughts on the process of selection, who should be included in giving input and recommendations on the decision. Specific requirements that you would like to see included in the contract. And then what are your requests for monitoring on the implementation of the action? So we'll go around the table, maybe start over here, please. Actually, Ms. Birdsall, if you can put those 5
On the screen?
I'm not sure my colleagues have those in front of them, and it's a little bit, it would be helpful to collect our thoughts.
And Madam Chair, if I could just by way of introduction, or maybe for the, just for the public to understand what.
Thank you.
What Ms. Cordial will be putting on the screen reflects at least my best attempt to glean what I was hearing as sort of consensus from conversation, draft motion language with the, so I heard primarily conversations about external management. What's in front of you doesn't include right now motions around reorganization, for example, but obviously all of your same options until you vote, all your same options remain. Nothing on here is sort of remotely sacred, and you all, we can edit as we go, but hopefully it will at least help as a starting off point.
Okay, yep. Thank you for attempting to collect our thoughts. We were struggling with that yesterday. Board Member Durham? Oh, big, make that big.
I will.
Yay, good. And you're writing it down?
Pardon me?
Yes.
I want to make sure that staff is writing down our thoughts. We need that thing that you talk into and then it writes.
Oh, man, that would be amazing.
They don't work very well, is my
Oh.
experience. I have one. It's, well, let me just start through by saying I'm certain that this is not the outcome that the Adams County 14 Board was looking for, but I hope they'll act in good faith in trying to implement this decision for the benefit of all of the students in Adams County 14, because I don't think that anyone can defend the present circumstance where a district has lost 30% of its students to other alternatives, and those students that remain clearly are not performing to standards. So, and I think if everyone works in good faith, we can, over the next 4 years, ensure an improved outcome for these students over time. So I think the components of the decision-making authority, and these are not amendments, but I think things that should be considered in the final order, under that one, we should certainly include, and I think include the issue of the outside management, or the external management operator has the ability to make decisions relative to at-will employees. They also have they have the ability to make decisions regarding instruction and curriculum and what's chosen in those ways, the implementation, additional teacher training, and professional development consistent with contractual obligations that we hope the board might work hard to modify so that those don't become an impediment to the success of this plan. In terms of the criteria for the selection for the external management operator, I think that, I'm not quite sure, I think that will not be a simple process, but I would suggest that the CDE staff should oversee that to ensure that that ultimately, obviously we don't want to make the selection, but we should work collaboratively with the superintendent and the administrators in District 14 to ensure that the best possible outside management operator is selected, and really hopefully that will be a collaborative process taken on in good faith. In terms of the final approval of the contract, whether it's something that I don't know that should necessarily come back to this board, that I think that perhaps CDE staff or the commissioners should be in a position to sign off on the final and to approve the contract to ensure that it meets all of the elements that will be included in the final order, and that everything is done really to maximize the potential for success of this entire process. And obviously we should be monitoring, and I think just as we monitored over the last year the progress that the district makes, and this should be a very active monitoring and reporting process, and the external manager will be obligated to report regularly to the department, and that the department would have the right to request any and all information and data that's in possession of the external manager and the district to ensure that we're on track and making the kinds of progress that we'd like to make. So I think those are the items that should be included in, at least from my perspective, in the final order. I'm certain I haven't covered all of the things that needed to be in there, particularly when it comes to the specifics of the number of items over which the external manager would have jurisdiction over in the ordinary course of delivering quality education.
Thank you. Board Member Flores.
I think, I agree with you, but I think before that, we should ask that the proposal or that the contract provide extant research that the external management entity has the capacity to do the work at Adams 14 and to get the work done. That we do need to have evidence that this entity has been able to be successful with other districts before. And so I think that's very important to have just at the very beginning.
Board Member Flores, do you want to comment on any of these other items? We're going across the table. to provide our individually provide our input on these. You don't have to. You did just identify one of them, certainly, the
Yeah.
second one. But are there any other pieces that you want to add?
No, I'm happy with this one. I think this is very important. And it should supersede, the
Sure.
others that you mentioned, which too are very important, super important.
Board
Thank
Member
you.
Rankin?
We're talking about Adams 14, the district,
We are
correct?
talking about Adams
Correct?
14, the district,
I
and,
can-
and or the school, if you've, the high school.
I'd like to separate them. And did you want me, just now though, we were talking about the district, is that correct? Can
We-
talk about either?
Either and or.
Okay.
If she wants to separate them, I'd like to speak against that.
Okay, we are going now, we're not having a conversation, we are going, giving our individual input at this point.
Well,
And then
that
there'll
would
be
be mine.
opportunities.
Just for the record, I'd like to state that I'm concerned about outside management because we've done it before, and it's failed. It's failed drastically. And I don't think that there's one place to put the blame, if that's what we wanted to do. And it's very disturbing. I think there's a lot of leadership that is having difficulty there. I think an external management company will be hopefully helpful in that area. But I personally would like to see more disruption take place, not going along this road that we've been doing. Just because sometimes the disruptive influences are the ones that really bring about real change. And I think we need this in this district. I would like to separate the district and the full external management from the high school. I think the high school should be chartered, and I know at least there's one board member that doesn't agree with me on that. But the reason I take them out is because I think that would shine a spotlight on the school, that we can do something more, get more help in that area. Even though the external management comes over the whole district, I think there could be a spotlight and more emphasis in the high school, which seems to be an important feature of this community. And it was even brought up yesterday that if the older students set the example, we've got to really work with them to set a good example. Set the example we want that district to be proud of, and for the younger students that are coming up. And I don't think we can broad brush the district and focus also on that high school unless they have more of an emphasis. So that would be my recommendation. And I still bring it back to parents and the students. We have got to focus on the students, and the first step is to get the parents involved, and if the parents are involved, the community's involved. As you said last time, that's when everything works. So I would say full management, and all of those points reiterate what Board Member Durham says, and also add within that the chartering of the high school.
Board Member McClellan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with Board Member Flores that we should have some requirements built around the capacity for this outside management operator, external management operator. They should have a track record for success. I do think that either the Department of Education or the State Board itself should have some role in the selection process if that is permissible. I think it would be important, we're either taking responsibility or we're not taking responsibility. And if we are taking responsibility in our role as a state board and a Department of Education, then I think part of that responsibility has to allow for the empowerment for site visits, drop-in visits, to make sure that we're checking in, to make sure everything's going well. And by that I don't mean on specified days. So, because you can't get an accurate picture if it's the one day a month that everyone is expecting the site visit. I think that whoever it is at the Department of Education who will be assigned to monitoring this ongoing to make sure that it doesn't go off the rails, or if it does look like it's going sideways with a particular operator, we need to know it as quickly as possible so we can take full responsibility. We're either going to do this right or we're not. So I think unannounced drop-in site visits have to be allowed. I also want to make sure that we have a clause in the contract that addresses the possibility that none of us want to see, but in the event that there is an issue of non-performance on the part of the operator, I want to make sure that we have very clear guidelines as to how that process rolls forward, and the State Board of Education needs to have a role. So those are some of my thoughts, maybe not all of them, but that's probably enough for now.
Board Member Schaffel.
Yes, I think this is really about leadership and about what goes on in classrooms between teachers and students. And so I think one of the biggest levers is this external management operator. It's essential that that entity has a track record of getting buy-in from teachers, an entity with expertise on curriculum and instruction, the use of data to inform instructional decisions, expertise in multi-tiered systems of support, and in training with leadership and sustaining a plan that actually is working. I also think it's so essential that this entity is able to work with the district in engaging the community and the parents so that those voices are heard loudly and that those adjustments and changes can be made. So I look forward to the progress that can be made, and I'm hoping that this approach will be beneficial to the students in this district.
Thank you. Board Member Goff?
Agreement on, at some degree, with everything that's been said. However, I keep coming back to what my main priority and my main focus of this has been and will continue to be. Whoever is chosen and selected by whatever means through whichever channel, I really would like to have assurance, and I do believe that the Adams 14 community deserves to be assured as well, that this group or individual, this entity, they have the capacity to set up some really positive, productive, structured, predictable, understandable, and clear communications strategies and feedback of the same. I personally would like to know on a weekly basis what's happening, what's going on. I am not necessarily in need of particular data points at anything. I just would like to know what is happening in our community there that is promoting and leading to a more successful outcome for your kids. I find that simple, and yet it's been difficult to feel that has been happening. In addition and related, I'd like the external management organization to have proven capacity of working within the current Adams 14 program areas and seeing what is the best way to connect the dots. And in that regard, as far as content and learning, student learning, how are things being integrated in all aspects of student lives? From career and tech ed development, which in my mind is post-secondary readiness issues, down to the elementary level and all the important programs that have to happen for elementary level. Just where are the dots being connected? And do you have an external manager that's able to see that and make sense of it on a broad scale, and then be able to work with your district and your community to communicate that stuff? Those are my two things: communication and connections in all kinds of ways. I think that's really what I'm feeling is the essence of this right now. So,
Sure. Oh, I'm sorry. Your turn.
Thank you. And then we can
Go
have a
ahead.
motion and open it up to discussion. First of all, I guess I want to disagree with Board Member Durham about who does the picking, the choosing. I think the choosing is at the school board level. Your comment was that whether it's acceptable to the superintendent and the administrators of the district. I want to go a little higher than that. If you disagree, please say so, but I just think that is to whom this EMO would be reporting, not necessarily the current folks, and to others as well. The other thing that I want to I just can't help but make the comment that disruption is in vogue. It is not always good, and what we're disrupting here is potentially the lives of our kids, of our high school kids. And so if there's someone that comes forward that wants to run Adams High School as a charter that goes through the process that's approved by the EMO, that's one thing. But for us to just come in and disrupt for disruption's sake
Exactly.
is I'm not comfortable with that. So
Yeah.
you can go ahead and make the motion later on, but you pushed my button on that one, sorry.
No, sure.
I think we've covered all of those. But Ms. Tolson, help us out. Where have we not made, what topic have one of us not made a comment on?
I don't find any gaps in my notes anyway, to the
Okay.
extent they track the
So
conversation.
the specificity has varied among us, right? Some of us are sort of generalists here, and some of us probably who have spent more time in the classroom have been very, very helpful, and I appreciate that in some of the specifics. And I just would like you to glean that. I do appreciate the specificity because it's going to help. The only risk when we get specific is that we forget something, which is why we're not going to have a motion today.
Well, Madam Chair,
In order. Thank you.
part of what I was envisioning might be helpful to us. Obviously, some of what's going to go in an order is going to be informed by sort of the legal framework we're in, right, between constitutional and statutory provisions. So
Oh, really? Does that
that'll
have to restrain us?
that'll require some wordsmithing for us, and then there's educational components that obviously staffs will be a wonderful resource. But there are a couple of different ways it could happen going forward. Certainly, we'll come to a meeting with a draft, and the board can discuss it. If that could be too many cooks in the kitchen, the other option would be if you wanted to designate just one or two board members, because I don't want it to create another sort of electronic meeting, but to sort of be point people as we fine-tune a version of the order to come to the board. That would be another option. I know you've designated board members to work on orders in connection with charter school appeals before, so that's sort of an in-between, having everyone have their hands in it during the course of a meeting versus having something pretty darn final, hopefully, when we come in.
What are your thoughts, guys? One or two people?
Two would be good.
Sure. A couple of people would be fine.
Compromise capable would be best.
Sorry, Ms. Goff, say that louder.
Compromise capable would be best.
May I just say?
Please, go ahead.
I think yesterday, when we were all, talking about this, I think we were in unison in that we were going to have an external manager that would be in control not only of or over the district and helping the district as well as the high school. I don't think we had.
There's no requirement that we stay that way, however.
and
Let's
I
just,
do- and
let's
I
just
do
let the
rem-
process play it out.
Exactly, and I do remember that Board Member McClellan specifically asked our Attorney General here whether the board could still did have the authority to then say yea or nay to a charter school. And the response was, you did? And the response was yes. So I don't think we want to get this right. We don't want to ultra micromanage this. And that's why we're putting a lot of emphasis on getting that manager, that external manager, to be the best, the super competent that they can be. So we know The community does not want that. And so we need to kind of listen to and remember those letters that were written to us and put that in as well.
Thank you. So in order to reach our goals, I think there's some key areas that need to be addressed that we've discussed. Leadership and governance is huge. The leadership challenges in this situation are tremendous, and we really do encourage and hope for a high-quality board and superintendent with coherent expectations and a clear plan to get it done. And additionally, community engagement is an embedded and critical issue. We do want to see a path forward that is constructed together, that we do together. Thank you, colleagues. I would entertain a motion on the floor. Board Member Goff?
I move to direct the Office of the Attorney General to prepare an order for the board's consideration to direct Adams County School District 14 to enter into a contract with a public or private entity to fully manage the district for at least 5 years. 4 years. The proposed order should include a scope of responsibility for the management entity aligned to the deficiencies identified by CDE Progress Monitoring and the State Review Panel. The order should require that the district delegate, in clear and unambiguous language, formal decision-making authority as a condition of continuing the stay of the board's 2017 removal of the district's accreditation. The order should specify that if the district fails to do so within 90 days, the stay of the 2017 order removing the district's accreditation would terminate and the district will be unaccredited. At that time, the state board may take further actions as permitted by law, including conversion of district-run schools to charter schools. The order should reflect that the board is taking no separate action at this time regarding Adams City High School, but that the external manager shall have an opportunity to evaluate and make recommendation regarding further options for Adams City High School.
Thank you. That's a proper motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I second.
Thank you. Any
Matt-
further discussion?
Madam Chair.
Board Member Rankin.
I would like to put forth an amendment, which would be the last paragraph of what was read. The order should reflect that the board is taking no separate action at this time regarding Adams City High School, but that the external manager shall have an opportunity to evaluate and make a recommendation regarding further options for Adams City High School. I would like to take the high school out of that motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Discussion?
Let's take a vote.
Madam Chair, yes, I
Yeah,
do.
Board
Yeah,
Member Durham.
I don't think, I will vote for and support a charter recommendation for the high school. I'm under no illusion that it's going to pass, but I do think it's always important to to try and put a stake in the heart of the parade of imaginary horribles that somehow seem to be associated with charters. I do personally believe that it would be a superior, that this could be a very superior option to what we've proposed. But what we've proposed is, even without this, is very significant. So I think then when we get back to the motion, if this fails, then I do have some additional comments. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Board Member McClellan.
Yes, I just wanted to, just for the sake of transparency, state my reason for wanting to preserve Adams City High School and give this this proposal to go forward with an outside management operator. This is the community's only high school, only public high school, and to replace that would feel like a pretty radical move, and I know that strong action is needed, but my hope is that we are indeed taking that strong action by giving the authority that we are giving to the external management operator. So I'm going to respect the recommendation of the state review panel in opting to give this option a try rather than charterizing the public high school, the only public high school that this community has. Thank you.
Board Member Flores.
I would like to say that I agree with all that Director McClellan stated, and that I think it would really kill this district if we did take away the high school from a very important, I would call it even a separate institution, a high school. The high school of a district is so the life of the community, and to make it a separate entity would really drive a terrible stake, a horrible stake, indecent stake into the heart of this district. And I would say no to that idea. Thank you.
Would you call the roll, please? This is on the amendment.
The
please.
amendment, correct.
The amendment to separate
To
the
remove-
order to the district, to separate Adams 14 High School from the order to Adams 14 School District.
Correct. Thank you. Board Member Durham.
Yes.
Board Member Flores.
No.
Board Member Goff.
No.
Board Member McClellan.
No.
Board Member Rinkin.
Yes.
Board Member Shuffle.
Yes.
Board Member Schroeder.
No.
That amendment fails. 4 to 3.
Any further discussion on the original
Thank you, Madam
motion?
I do think this is very significant. I think it is important to point out that this management option has not failed in the past because it's never been proposed or will be implemented in the way that it's proposed to be implemented here. It really is management as opposed to all of the things that could come otherwise in terms of meddling and it provides one decision maker, one responsible party, and that responsible party will live or die with their success. So I would simply hope, and it may be a hope against hope, that all the adults and the organizations to which those adults belong, who are in one way or another going to be unhappy with this decision, hopefully they will recognize that, at least we believe on a good faith basis, that this is a decision made in the best interest of the children of this district. And if they will work collaboratively with in the selection process and really try to obtain the best possible manager available and create the best possible environment for the success of that manager, that the board and the administration of this district will play a very significant role in the success of every student in this district. To simply suggest that the status quo and to fight to preserve the status quo is somehow benefiting the students of this district, I think is completely without merit, and one would hope that we could get past the egos involved and the drama that has been involved in the management of this district for some time, and turn it over to a responsible party with the ability to make decisions, and everybody work to make sure that that management organization is successful, because their success is the success of the school board, it's the success of the administration, it's the success of the children of the district. You can't separate that, and to let egos and the fine print of, gee, does this authority really exist, to stand in the way of a thoughtful and productive attempt to implement this plan will only exacerbate the problem. It will only be worse. The results for the children can only be worse. So if everybody is willing to put their egos aside and work together, I believe that this plan has a great chance for very significant success, and that success is defined in the improvement of the outcomes for the children. There may be bruised egos for the adults, but the children are the ones that I think we have to focus on. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other comments before we take a vote?
Yes.
You have a comment?
No,
Vote.
agreed. Board Member Durham.
Yes.
Board Member Flores.
Yes.
Board Member Goff.
Yes.
Board Member McClellan.
Yes.
Board Member Rinkin.
Yes.
Board Member Shuffle.
Yes.
Board Member Schroeder.
Yes.
Thank you. That passes unanimously.
Thank you. So, friends and Adams 14 and staff, it's our greatest hope that you will leverage the direction the board has provided in order to obtain the vision that we all share for your kids. We will continue to support your work through our staff's engagement in district. We know that sometimes some additional knowledge and capacity is what are needed for improvement, which is why we've given this, we're providing this upcoming order, and that our staff will be available, some of our grants will be available to help you do this. The bottom line is statute that gives the state board authority to direct only 5 actions. There are challenges with each one of them, and you have heard us talk about them. None of those will solve the challenges that you have. The real power is going to lie at the hand of the local school district, the board, and the community. And we implore you to use all directed action for good. Double down, triple down on your efforts to improve so that you can be successful. That means you need to implement these and other strategies in your community in order to see the results that we all hope to see. Ms. Cordial, I would appreciate if you could look at your calendar and determine what date would be best for us to have a special meeting in order to look at the order that we've requested from the AG's office and take a vote.
I will do that.
Thank you. Should we? Mr. Superintendent? Short and sweet because we still have another.
Yes, thank you. I would just like to thank the State Board of Education for honoring our request to move forward with an external management organization. We look forward to working hand in hand with the Colorado Department of Education and the State Board to provide the best education possible for the students of Adams 14. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for all your hard work. 1 minute for those of you who don't want to suffer through another one of these. And then we're going to go to 6.02, which is Pueblo decision. So if there are any of you, yeah, that's what I thought. Feel free to be noisy for 1 minute.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, and I think they're gonna be
Like,
right up in the corner. Mid-delay street. I have, exactly, a little more time than they were. Yeah. I'll shoot you a There's a specific rule. I know, man, some families, who knows? You know what's good? Of course. Yes, but please don't.
We can then change.
You get it sometime? Yeah. Okay, all right. Don't let me forget. Okay, well.
Hi, folks. I am not going to reread exactly the same thing because I'm pretty sure every one of you have already heard this script. So let me just shorten it a little bit. Okay, we had 3 options. We eliminated option 1, which was to just continue with your plan. We had option 2, which was to add additional actions to the current turnaround plan that's underway. Option 3 was to discontinue the turnaround plan, take a new action, bring in outside management, and that outside management will help determine whether you ought to continue with the current turnaround plan work that's underway or bring in something different or do something differently. So it's a little bit of a combination, potentially a combination of 2 and 3. So again, colleagues, remember this is different. This is 2 schools as opposed to a school district, but it is about external management. I would appreciate if we could go around the table, starting at the other end, and address ideally each of these questions, but whichever ones that you want to talk about. Provide input to our Attorney General to create an order that we will be looking at in a few days. Board Member Goff?
Similar to the vein I spoke about earlier, I think of utmost importance for your community in each of the schools, but also your entire school district community is clear communication that recognizes and acknowledges and actually honors the experience and the expertise and the potential and ongoing contribution of that community to improving the situation in both schools. I am encouraged, I would think that your community is appreciative, and they show it, about the attributes, particularly at Risley with the health clinic, health facilities, and just human being supports that are offered for the welfare of the families there, and to continue to communicate how that helps. How does that lead to the successes, all of your, and not to use the word lightly, but extraneous supports that go into children's learning and development, and to foster and grow those, continue to promote them. I'd also, as far as the learning and the performance, the actual achievement performance is concerned, there again, I believe that your programs are show promise. There has been some good work done, and growth is happening, Heroes in particular. And again, the community supports there for Risley and for Heroes both that really do just add to kids' welfare, their health, which is extremely important. The facility situation, heart goes out to you. Probably all of us here and everybody in our rooms often has the feeling of what it is like to be challenged by the environment, literally the environment that kids spend their day and teachers spend their work life in. And I believe that your efforts to maintain those and be and rest assured and be able to tell people that yes, we have safe schools and your children are not in danger. That's another good thing to keep communicating. And how do you take advantage of that that particular point of confidence? Lastly, and I thank you for indulging, I think keeping your community effort going. I know there's been a lot of good productive things happening in the Pueblo community after some trying days over the past 12 months, and appreciate that, what goes into that. So some continued building of those relationships and taking steps to venture further into how can those relationships develop and be most advantageously acted upon. So thank you, congratulations, and it's important to do this work for improvement.
Thank you. Board Member Shepherd.
Well, I'd first like to say that it looks like there's been some progress thus far that we referenced yesterday with Bessemer. I think there's some good things in place and that you can build on, but really needs to be, I think, more of a relentless focus and deeper assistance from this external management operator that you've already spoken of. So I think choosing the right operator is so essential, as I said before. Important to be getting great buy-in from teachers, to have an operator that has deep expertise on curriculum and instruction, what goes on in classrooms, the use of data to inform instruction, which I think has already begun, but a more consistent approach to that. Expertise in multi-tiered systems of support so that you're targeting instruction at tiers 1, 2, and 3 and differentiating for students, and then really working deeply with the leadership and how to sustain this plan so that it's not something that works for a time and then fades out. Also engaging the community and parents, which I think you've begun to do also. Just looking at the recommendations from the review panel, I would echo that as is essential, that full decision-making authority over the scheduling, the hiring, the performance management, coaching piece, supervision of instructional coaches, and responsibility for the community outreach and communication piece would be really helpful. And the good news is I think you're already on the path on some of these areas because you've made some good initial gains in Bessemer. And it's limited to 2 schools, though some of the other schools in your district need assistance too. But I've worked with you, Superintendent McAliza, before, and I know you have a lot of great expertise and a real resolve and commitment to this district. So I appreciate the work of your team and look forward to great results based on this approach.
Thank you. Board Member McClellan.
Thank you so much to your entire team for being here a second day, especially from such a great distance. And I would echo that it is my hope, too, that we see the same kind of improvement that you've experienced at Bessemer, at Risley, and at Heroes. So, and I hope that this external management operator helps to bring you there. I wanted to pivot to our legal counsel and to ask, is it necessary for us to repeat all of the guardrails that we wanted to put in place for an ideal contract and search process and monitoring process that we spoke about in the other case? Or is it enough to say that I can't think of one that I wouldn't want to have in both?
I think that's sufficient direction, because remember, the formal effective action will come when you approve the order, and you can see if we plug the right things in when we bring you that draft.
Okay, very good. So it's not necessary for me to repeat the input I gave to the last one?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Board Member Rankin.
Superintendent Macaluso, thank you again for coming back for a couple years and today. Appreciate that, and I'm glad you're staying, as you told me yesterday, a couple more years and seeing this through, and hopefully you're on a trajectory that you will see continued growth and improvement in the middle schools. The decision-making authority, I believe, because of in the past, needs to be clarified in this contract. I think that's very important. And it has to be crystal clear. The selection process of the EMO, what is it we're looking for? And I think once we see that, we will decide we're all looking for the same thing. and it's going to add additional improvement from the partner that you have currently. And I think the administration of it is going to just give more strength to the district. I think it's going to be very helpful. I hope the contract is embraced by the board, because I think it's the board and the EMO that's going to be working very closely together. And it'll be monitored, I'm sure, by CDE or our board, or that'll be specified also. And we are moving in the right direction in Pueblo, and I think we can continue that way, but I think we need to make sure we don't go, after 8 years, go another 2 years before we see there's maybe additional help that needs to be given. And I hope that you keep us informed if you see anything that needs to be changed too. I think everything else I would agree with, especially the parent and student incorporation into the growth there.
Board Member Flores.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I believe that Pueblo Public Schools has been working well on building systems, which I believe are well-defined and delineated, and I hope that you keep up the improvements that you have been working on. I know I didn't hear this from Adams 14, but I certainly did hear them from Pueblo Public Schools. I know this next one is kind of radical, but I would ask the new governor for, I would ask the new governor and the legislature for assistance to create a fund to help in supporting the building of structures and assistance in bringing in business to Pueblo. I know that I'm criticizing our present governor, but I just don't think he did enough for areas outside of Denver. And I think that we need to look at the whole of Colorado and not just Denver.
Is that in those 5 things?
I'm sorry?
Is this in this list of
I
5
know,
things that helps
that's
the
why
order?
I said I was going to go off.
Could
And-
we
and
stay
I
on
think-
because it's lunchtime?
It's
Board
short.
Member
It
Flores?
is short and sweet. So
Okay, go.
I do believe that you could ask for that assistance. Also, in the arts and such, I will be speaking with people in the arts so that we may have assistance in that area for rural areas. I think that is in great need in our state. I know that in another state that I was in, there was a council to provide special artists that went into the schools to, that gave short, I guess, internships and such in the schools to provide that kind of awareness of the arts. And I think that's greatly needed in Colorado. And I hope that will also help. But I think we should be doing more for the whole state, the rural state, and not just for the city of Denver and its surrounding metropolitan areas. Thank you very much.
Board Member Durham.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll incorporate by reference the suggestions I made earlier for Adams 14 into what ought to be in this order. And I would simply say that I think I appreciate the attitude of the expressed by the Pueblo Board and the superintendent. I think that we've created every possibility for success with this model, and I think this proposal is a heads you win and tails you can't lose, because if we all work diligently together, the school board, the school administration, CDE staff, and we're successful, There's plenty of positive to go around and be shared by everyone. Frankly, if you all work hard and try and make successful and it still fails, then it really comes back on us for suggesting a model that for somehow was flawed. I don't believe it's flawed, but this is new ground for all of us, and so we're all taking some risks here. Hopefully the children will be the beneficiary of those risks, and I want to thank you for what you've accomplished to this point and look forward to better results in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. What I would add to what I've heard is that Board Member Flores gave some criteria on characteristics of a successful choice for an EMO, and I thought those were very helpful, and I'd like to the extent they're relevant in this situation, I'd like to make sure research-based, experience, et cetera, to incorporate that in this order as well. Recognizing that it's still a different animal, it's not identical, but some of those criteria I thought were very helpful. I guess I'll just say that I would love, and I look forward to Pueblo having the kind of student achievement growth that we've seen elsewhere. I think that once you can get to that point where kids are really thriving, you're going to have a district that has a large at-risk population, but that you can do just really great things. And you were on that track, as Board Member Rankin has mentioned. Those of us who are old do remember that history and the high hopes that we had back then, that was going to not just be Bessemer, but be the whole district. And ultimately it wasn't, but let's hope this happens again. You're definitely on the right track, so that would be my hope for our success here. And I would entertain a motion, please. Board Member Rankin?
Do you want to take these separately?
No.
Okay.
Well, they're two.
They're two
They're
separate.
two, sorry, yes.
Let's
We need to do it
go with
separately.
HEROES first.
Sure.
I move to direct the Office of the Attorney General and CDE staff to prepare an order for the board's consideration to direct Pueblo City Schools to enter into a contract with an entity to wholly manage HEROES Middle School for a period of not less than 4 years. The proposed order should include a scope of work for the external manager aligned to the deficiencies identified by the State Review Panel. The order should specify that if the district fails to contract delegating in clear and unambiguous language all management of HEROES Middle School to an external management entity by a certain date, the state board may take further actions as permitted by law, including conversion of HEROES Middle School to a charter school or closing the school.
It's a proper motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Further discussion about HEROES? Would you call the vote, please? Madam Clerk.
Board Member Durham.
Yes.
Board Member Flores.
Yes.
Board Member Goff.
Yes.
Board Member McClellan.
Yes.
Board Member Rankin.
Yes.
Board Member Shuffle.
Yes.
Board Member Schroeder.
Yes.
Thank you. That passes unanimously for
you.
HEROES.
Another motion, please?
I move to direct the Office of the Attorney General and CDE staff to prepare an order to direct Pueblo City Schools to enter into a contract with an entity to wholly manage Risley International Academy of Innovation for a period of not less than 4 years. The proposed order should include a scope of work for the external manager aligned to the deficiencies identified by the State Review Panel. The order should specify that if the district fails to contract delegating in a clear and unambiguous language all management of Risley to an external management entity by a certain date, the state board may take further actions as permitted by law, including conversion of Risley International Academy of Innovation to a charter school or closing the school.
It's a proper motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion on this motion?
Just have a
Board Member Goff?
Just a question. Because this is a direction to develop an order, so by saying by a certain date, does that take away the ambiguity and because it's not final yet, so when the order comes and there will be a final date there?
Right, that's a great question. I think, what I'd like to do is probably get guidance from CDE staff and about how long that selection and contracting process is. What's realistic? Is it 60 days? Is it 90 days? I assume we're talking in that time frame. And I'll bring that back to you all. But it will have to have a date in order to provide
I-
guidance to the district.
I think everybody would like to know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Could you call the roll, please?
Board Member Durham.
Yes.
Board Member Flores.
Yes.
Board Member Goff.
Yes.
Board Member McClellan.
Yes.
Board Member Rinkin.
Yes.
Board Member Shuffle.
Yes.
Board Member Schroeder.
Yes.
Thank you. That passes
Thank you.
unanimously.
Again, we wish you well. Ms. Cordial, we hope you'll help us determine a date
Yes. I
at
will.
which we will actually take the final vote on the order for Pueblo 60. It'll be shortly, but I'm really not sure exactly when. We will make sure that you know. It may well be a phone vote. And you'll have an opportunity to look at the order as well as us. Am I right?
I'd be happy to do that, yes.
Okay. So my next item on our agenda is lunch, but thereafter is an executive session. Should we go into that? At lunch? I don't get,
I think, well, I was just thinking instead of recessing, coming back in just for me to read the record and then going into executive session,
can we do that?
if it's okay with,
Is that okay?
That's fine.
Okay.
It's the one in anticipation of the charter school appeal.
Yeah.
okay.
Go, do it.
An executive session has been noticed for today's state board meeting in conformance with 24-6-4023A CRS to receive legal advice on specific legal questions pursuant to 24-6-4023A Roman numeral 2 CRS. Matters required to be kept confidential by federal law, rules, or state statutes pursuant to 24-6-4023A Roman numeral 3 CRS.
Thank you. Do I have a motion? Thank you. A second?
Second.
Second.
We're in. Thanks, guys.